Hello and welcome back to the Spiritual Success Revolution. I'm your host, Toni-Anne Campbell, Spiritual Success Coach for Women, and I'm your guide and soul mentor here as we journey towards spiritual success. And today I bring to you Sandra Vesterstein, and this conversation is really a mindset up level. We talk about all the blocks and barriers that might stop you from stepping into using your gifts to bring them forward into the world to create wealth. And so this is a mindset up level beyond positive thinking and really dives deeply into the inner architecture that is limiting you from receiving and achieving everything that's in your divine flow. And so you're invited to join our Facebook group where we can learn together in sisterhood and community, where we can really ask questions of the speakers to get the most out of this experience and to ask questions of each other to support each other on this journey of transformation. Hello and welcome back to the Spiritual Success Revolution. I'm your host, Toni-Anne Campbell, and today we have with us Sandra Vesterstein from the Thrive Learning Collective. And Sandra supports people towards their certification in NLP, hypnotherapy, Reiki, and life coaching. And she also supports women to become their best self through Women in Spirit. And thank you so much, Sandra, for being with us today. It's such a delight to have you.
Well, thank you, Toni-Anne. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. And your story is, I guess, very multifaceted, being that you now support women to be able to become their highest and best self and become certified in a range of things. But you've also had a personal struggle with anxiety and depression and various things that you've actually used these tools with yourself as well to be able to do all of that you do in the world.
Right. It's really interesting because when I was growing up, I always had this low level of anxiety, but no one ever labeled it as anxiety. So I didn't really know what it was, but I always was I was a very worried child, always. And I remember going to a counselor when I was about 40 years old. And I said to her, what's normal? Like most of my days are just, if you saw me, you would say, oh, she looks so happy. She's such a pleasant person, but inside I was just being torn up. And most of the days when I reflected back, I would say weren't very good. And so I said to her, so what's the normal range? And she goes, well, I'm just curious, what's yours? And I went, I don't know. So we started counting well, that was a good day. That wasn't such a good day. That was a really bad day. And it was 90% of my days in my mind were not very good. And she's like, oh, honey, we got to change that. So she did work with me, but she never knocked it out of the ballpark. Neither one of us did, of getting a hold of that anxiety. What was feeding it so I could let it go? And so it ended up that I kind of stumbled into NLP, and through an accident I had a concussion, which really ramped up my anxiety. And through a small little process in NLP, that anxiety broke loose. And it was like, I got my life back. So I really pretty much had anxiety for 42 years.
Yeah.
And for my 44th birthday, I got my life back. So it was pretty cool.
Oh, I just got tingles. And really that speaks to the power of these processes, doesn't it? And also the power of knowing the right sort of processes to really loosen this stuff up. And that it actually doesn't even need to take all that long at times, just getting the right sort of processes and things can actually change quite quickly.
Right. Well, oftentimes, like when I talk about phobias, a phobia is learned like that. So if a phobia is learned like that, why can't we relearn it? Something that we can respond differently, just like that. But we're programmed to think that change is hard. Change takes a lot of time. We try to change. So just through our language, try means that we're not going to do it. Yeah. And so, yeah. And I also think that because I work with so many women with anxiety and depression, I think so many women out there feel trapped because they're like pulled. They want to be a mother, or they're mothering in the mothering process, and yet they want to have financial independence. They're just it's like they're being pulled. And I really believe showing people that you can have what you really want. It's just how you go about getting it is what makes the difference. And so oftentimes what people do is they'll, like if I'm working with somebody and they say, I really want to, make at least $200,000 a year. And that's all they focus on, is $200,000 a year. And instead of me, if I take them through a process and say, okay, so what would it be like having that? Because it's really not the $200,000 a year. It's the feeling that they're going to have when they make it. And then checking to make sure it's ecological, because that's where we get tripped up. So if this person has in their mind, making $200,000 a year would mean, if they're a mother, I'm not going to be able to spend as much time with my family. Well, their unconscious mind, if it's running that program in the back of the mind, it's not going to let her achieve that 200,000. So I am a stickler on making sure things are ecological, so that if that does come up, we need to strategize on how to get around that. So then you can move forward with an open heart, and you can feel good about yourself, and you can create this confidence and competence, by doing and knowing that you're on the right path. So it's really in that alignment that I think is so crucial.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure many of our listeners are really going to relate to that, because as you say, like, so often we have these values conflicts and feeling like we're drawn in so many different directions, and without realizing actually that's the conflict is what's stopping you. And when you create that alignment, then it is this beautiful streamline, isn't it? It creates this energy that then is uninhibited, as it were.
Well, right. And how many of us have these expectations, like we aren't going to be supported, or maybe, our kids aren't going to be okay if we work or do what we really love. So I always say expectations are, they're the hidden beliefs. So if I'm running an expectation, I'm not going to get the support, people, it's lonely at the top, I listen for all that languaging, because once a person sets out their expectation, usually their life follows suit. So it's as simple as, think of it, being invited to a party. Maybe you worked all week, you're dead tired, and you're like, oh my God, this is just going to be so boring. And very rarely does it's not boring, because you've already set the expectation. You've put out the energy, it's going to be boring. So the way the unconscious mind works, it's going to sort to prove that expectation correct. Expectation equals belief.
Yeah.
So, once we get consciously aware of that, we can take control of that conscious mind instead of the conscious mind controlling us.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess this is an element of personal mastery, isn't it? A mastery of the human self, as it were. And we all sort of can fall into the trap of that automatic pilot, where the unconscious mind is really driving the show. And I hear, as you say, with these strategies, that actually that doesn't have to be the case, that we can be a little bit more, can we call it enlightened, or conscious at least, of that process, and to really start to steer the ship in the direction that we want to go in.
Right. I have had more people have aha moments when I demystify failure. I get people that come to me, and even people that are in the class, they have the imposter syndrome. My life's not perfect. How could I be a coach? How could I be a hypnotherapist?
Yeah.
Well, no one's life is perfect. And the imperfection is the way to growth. If we all were same, we wouldn't grow and expand, right? It's in the differences that we can grow and expand and honor those differences. And so when I demystify failure, like if I said to somebody, well, how would you know you were super successful in whatever their dream was? And they look at me and like they just have this blank stare, like, what are you talking about? And well, that's why they're not successful, because they can't even imagine it. They have no representation of that. And so it's not that they don't want to, it's just that I think of it as they don't have a program that supports their dream.
Yeah.
So in my work as a hypnotherapist and NLP practitioner, my part of my job is to create that pattern for them. Together, we create a pattern. And so now they have a representation of how to do it. You don't know how to do something because you don't have a past experience of doing it. Our brain doesn't know if we're imagining how it could be versus actually having done it. So it's really amazing to see. It's like they just relax. They're like, really, I'm not a failure. I'm not a loser. No, you're none of those.
Yeah.
You're just running a pattern.
Yes, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because to me, it is like giving yourself permission to dream again, and just not looking at the past results as the prediction of what's going to happen in the future. That at any point we can make that pivot towards what it is that we truly want.
Mhm. Well, that's that saying, the past is the best predictor of our future. I mean, we're told that.
Yeah.
And so, we just go on automatic pilot with that. But what if we could use our past as just an opportunity to learn? And we can look back. I mean, I know in NLP, when I have introduced the different positions of learning, like we could be in ourselves, first position, we can see the world through our perspective, and we can learn that way, right? Or we can step out of ourselves and look at ourselves and look at somebody else, that's third. Or we could go into somebody else's body, see through their eyes, hear through their ears in second position, and get a perspective of what's going on with them. It's all learning.
Yeah.
And when we take all that learning and we apply it, oh my God, life just changes. Our perception changes about our world and what we can have, do, be, whatever we want to set our goal to, achieve.
Yeah. And I love that, because it is really about, I guess, taking ownership over what it is that's happening for you in each and every moment, and taking ownership of where it is that you're going. And I just keep coming back to that automatic pilot, that we often go to sleep in our own lives and then kind of continue to play patterns that don't actually really serve, and to then actually...
We're not even aware of them. It's like most people don't understand that 95% of what we do is unconscious. 95%. So that little 5%, that conscious mind, we have to really wrestle with it, because, that little monkey mind, that repetitive thought or whatever. Once we get it though, like you can just tell when people finally get it, like they can step back and go, wait a minute. Is this what I want to create? I always love when people will come into class and they'll say, oh, I am the best manifester. I am incredible. And then it comes time to do a process, and they're all about blame.
Yeah, interesting.
And I go, okay, so when we blame, what we're expecting is the other person to get the lesson and not us, right? So I'll say, well, okay, no, let me get this straight. So when you first came in here, you were telling me what a great manifester you are, right? Remember that? And they're like, yeah, I'm a great manifester. So you didn't manifest this? And they're like, well, wait a minute. Of course not. But you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that people ask for trouble. I'm saying, when we're running certain thoughts and we're running certain feelings, those feelings are the energetic attraction to what is happening to us. And we have these certain belief systems. We're at a point of attraction for a certain experience. And that's just it. It doesn't have to be. We don't even have to blame ourselves.
No.
You can just let go of the blame and just think of it as feedback. Oh, I'm experiencing this in the world. What beliefs must I be having about myself and the world to have this to be happening? I mean, and when I get clear on that, I'll could say, well, maybe I have to change up my belief systems so I can create an experience.
Yes.
Justifying it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess just before we jumped on here today, we were talking about that whole idea of mindset, and how sometimes that sort of, it's bandied around to the point where it becomes insignificant. Like we go, yes, it's all about mindset, all about positive thinking, but actually it's not, it's more than that. It's mindset, but there's a little bit more to it than just sort of positive thinking, as it were.
Well, so in NLP, we believe everybody's working perfectly. We're all working perfectly. It's just we may not be running the strategy that's congruent to where we want to go.
Yeah.
And so that is just feedback. So if I'm looking in my outer world and I'm not where I want to be, I can take a step back and say, okay, I just break it down into the simplest formula. What thoughts must I be having about myself and the world? What feelings must I be running? What behaviors, when I'm running those thoughts and feelings, I behave in a certain way. And that's all steeped in beliefs. So that's what created this strategy. That's the strategy of what I'm currently doing. And then if I say to myself, well, what would I rather do? What would I rather have? What would I rather experience? And I let myself dream up of that experience. And then I'll go, oh, okay, so what thoughts must I have to have that experience?
Yeah.
Oh, what feelings must I have to have that? Oh my gosh, how would I behave if I had that? And then what beliefs would I have and to be running to have that experience? And when you do it on paper and people see the difference, they're not the same strategy.
No, that's right. Very clearly.
And people are like, oh my God. So that's why I think what happens in the law of attraction, and it's always about our affirmations, just think positively. Well, you can think positively. However, if you're not running the emotions aligned with that positive thought, it's not going to be as effective. It's like women going in the mirror and, saying, oh, I'm just going to think I'm beautiful. I think I'm beautiful. And and inside your gut is in a knot. You're thinking, oh my God, I'm fat. No, you're beautiful. No, I'm fat. No,
Yeah.
you're really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this little inner war.
Yes.
And, when we get that, then we can step into the co-creator side of the equation and say, I get to choose. I always love when people finally get it, that they can come from a place of choice. Yes. Life just doesn't have to happen to us. We can actually create life.
Yes, and I love what you mentioned there with the co-creation, because that's something that we don't always appreciate is our power to co-create, where we are co-creators and we participate in our life and the unfolding through the decisions that we make in each and every moment to directional.
Oh, I love that. I love that because, when you think of it, our whole life is based on little decisions and big decisions and the effects of those decisions. And so I often say, like, making a micro change in your thoughts, just a micro change can have a macro effect.
Yeah.
And so and learning how to navigate that. It's like learning how this is our brain, but our mind is out here. And so how can we navigate this beautiful mind that once we're guiding it in the right direction where we want to go, instead of looking in the past all the time, oh my gosh, it's like magical.
It is. Yeah.
Connect with, look at, like, how did we connect across the world?
Yeah.
When people start thinking the same way, vibrating the same way, there's that connection. And that's a beautiful way to be, I think.
It is, absolutely. And as you mentioned, it feels magical, and yet we can hear that there is a whole bunch of, you say, programming and various things that are happening internal to us. So it feels magical, and yet it's also conscious and deliberate. So we're sort of holding these two things together, isn't it?
I see it kind of like an alignment. Like when we are, we do this process called dream sculpting in our coaching program. And it's really the law of attraction on steroids. And we really work with the higher conscious mind, the unconscious, and the conscious mind. So, if our conscious mind could communicate to our higher conscious mind, our wishes are our command. I mean, we could do anything. However, it's not. We got to go through that unconscious mind that could have a lot of really positive patterns. It could have a lot of unuseful patterns. But if it can't get past those unuseful patterns because it doesn't have another way to do something, it gets stuck there. There's like a bottleneck. And so when our three minds are aligned, I almost think of it as like, that game when we were little where there was a marble and you could put it at the top of something and then it would go down. Well, I see it as when we're all aligned, we could put that marble and it goes down. So we have the divine and Mother Earth. They can meet and they can do this beautiful dance together. The masculine and the feminine can do this beautiful dance together because we're aligned. And then we can think a thought and all of a sudden, I'm thinking, Toni-Anne's going to give me a call, or gosh, I got to connect with her, and bada boom, bada bang, there's the call.
Yes.
Because we're aligned.
Yes, I love that. Yes, yeah, and it sounds like, again, there's a process and a deliberate intention there to create that alignment and an inner discipline, I'd like to say, call forward this inner discipline that comes with that, to say, well, we want to be in alignment, and that there are disciplines that we get to practice and have as part of our life.
Well, and it also, I think, has to do with, are you worthy of the alignment?
Mm.
Are you worthy of taking care of yourself? Are you worthy of nurturing yourself? I mean, when I created Women in Spirit, I'll never forget this. I was talking to my girlfriend, and my mom, when she passed away, was 80 years old. And about 6 months before she passed away, she had had a stroke. And she would call me and she'd be crying. And my dad had just passed away. And she'd be crying and she'd say, oh, I wasn't a very good mother and I wasn't a very good wife. And I had this little mental checklist that I would go through. No. Well, remember this, Mom? And remember this, and remember this. Pretty soon she'd be all, not so sad, right? But I remember talking to my girlfriend and I thought, my mom was probably one of the strongest women I know. I mean, there was something about her. She had some tenacity. And how many times did she go to bed not feeling worthy enough?
Yeah.
Man, if I could create a program that could just guide women to let go of the shame and the guilt so that they could be worthy of love. And I'm not talking love outside of themselves. I'm talking self-love.
Yeah.
If they could have that within themselves, that would be all worth it.
Mm.
That's how Women in Spirit was developed.
Yes. And it's fascinating because, as you say, how your mum, and I'm sure so many women perceive themselves, is often so vastly different from what the world sees, as it were.
Oh, I know. Well, I'm sure we've had the same thing. I mean, people, when I felt insecure or had that anxiety, they're like, oh, you're just always so happy and da-da-da-da. I'm inside going, oh my God, if they only knew what was happening on the inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't have that. I mean, it's like, I'm not saying I never get anxious. I do get anxious when it's appropriate to get anxious, but I don't have generalized anxiety.
Yeah.
Which it is an epidemic in this world,
Isn't it?
Especially women on antidepressants and anxiety and depression.
Mm.
It's amazing.
Mm.
And they've been on it for like 10 years, 10, 15 years. And you think, well, gosh, what would happen if you got to the root cause of what caused that depression? Because you weren't born depressed.
Yeah.
You learned depression. You weren't born anxious. You learned anxious. The only two fears that we have are fear of loud noises and fear of falling. All the other fears are learned.
Yeah.
Fear of failure, fear of success. Like when people say, oh, I'm so afraid of success. I'm like, that is not true. You're afraid it's going to be required of you to be successful. And you're not afraid of success.
Yes. I love that. The clarity.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
So I guess just bringing it forward to the spiritual success revolution, and then looking at the people tapping into their sacred gifts and then bringing it forward in alignment, what we're talking about, with their soul mission or their soul purpose. And I wonder what you might see as some of the biggest barriers that you've seen that really stop women going after what truly matters to them.
I always, my foundational belief on this is that the reason why women don't go forward and really create what they were created to create in the world, what they were created to share in the world, their gifts, or they don't own them, is because they're out of rapport with their spirit. They have disconnected from their spirit. And you cannot be connected to your spirit and hate yourself. You cannot be connected to your spirit and feel guilty about who you are or shameful about who you are. And I just really believe, when I hear women say, I'm not good enough, that's a shame statement, or I just can't do that. There's other women are better than that. That's guilt for not showing up, in a certain way. And so when we get women, when they acknowledge that they're disconnected from their divine self, because their divine self is perfect, and realizing that perfection is what allows us to go forth and explore and be curious in life. We're not going to do it perfectly. We weren't supposed to do it perfectly, because then there wouldn't be any learning, right? And it wouldn't be so much fun. Because learning is a lot of fun, and sometimes it's a little painful. We get to choose how long we want to stay in the pain, or the shame, or the guilt. We get to choose that. And so I think that's the biggest. I think that's the biggest barrier for women, that keeps women stuck and small and and just not having the clarity or the conscious awareness of what is actually playing in the back of their mind, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because it's like if we really kind of tune into the self and making that a priority to
Yes.
really get to know yourself, get to know what's going through your being, as it were. If you make that a priority, then all of this sort of stuff seems to become a work in progress. Like you say, no need to be perfect, that we can make mistakes, that you can really learn to be your own best friend, as it were, your own best cheer squad.
Well, that's true. I mean, I look at it, I do an exercise with people when, so say they're feeling really unsettled inside and they're scared. And I'll say, okay, I just want you to tap into that scared part of you, because it's not your totality, it's a part of you, right? And I want you to pull that little part out, and what do you see? And it's usually about either as like a 7 or younger version of themselves. And I want you to go take that younger version of you. I want you to put her little hands or his little hands in your hands. And I want you to ask that little you what you need. And I will tell you, there have been many tears over this, because sometimes that part of us just needs reassurance. Yeah. Sometimes that part of us just needs acceptance. Sometimes it needs love, whatever it is. But we have to learn to listen to that instead of, it's like, for women who have had kids, and your 3-year-old, when they want your attention and you kind of push them off, what does that 3-year-old do?
Yes, they escalate. Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
Well, that's what our mini me's do. Our little us, that if we don't pay attention to that little person inside and say, okay, so what is it that you need? That it comes back. It's like a little tantrum. Yeah. And so that's where you see women, everybody, men and women, when they have a needs-based life, if they don't get what they want, they're like a screaming baby. If they have a values-driven life, it may not be that they get everything they want. It's how they respond to when they don't get what they want is very different. They respond to it instead of react to it.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I also hear, yes, they respond to it. And in a way that's empowering to say, yeah, like, what can I learn from this? Or how does this make sense in the whole divine plan? And, there's this reset around this actually being something that you can bounce back from or recover from, or actually even grow from, to become even better, have an experience, better experience of life than you had before it.
Right. Well, they say the reason why we keep on doing the same pattern that's not very useful is because we haven't learned what we need to learn from that pattern. So like, for instance, I'll see women that keep on connecting with the same type of guy. They're like, what the heck? It's the same, and they have the same problems, just different face, right? Yeah. Because they didn't get the learning. So once you get the learning, the unconscious mind can stop sorting for that type.
Yes.
When you get the learning, you feel better about yourself. You create new beliefs about yourself. So then you're searching for different people. Yeah. Different experiences.
Absolutely. I love that. And again, coming back to that idea of this is just a feedback thing. This is not a blame thing. Because I so often hear like, I really have to learn my lesson in this. And so then they'll go into relationships going, I really need to learn my lesson, rather than maybe the lesson is to like not go into those sorts of relationships again.
Or maybe it's to leave.
Yes. So we say it with humor, but it can be very painful at times. But yes, it's sort of like, this is not about a blame or a shame or a punishment thing. This is about what's the learning, and let's receive that as feedback and then move on to our highest and best lives.
It's kind of like, we don't want to have the Bruce Almighty moment where, he's driving on the road and it says, stop, dead end. And he's like, after he, gets in this accident, he goes, God, why didn't you show me a sign? Well, the signs were there. It's how come we are not seeing them? We can't see them because the perception filter that we're running is not attuned to that.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And as you say, when you learn to read the signs, then you can go in another direction, relatively easily once you're reading the play correctly.
Right. An adjustment. All you do is make an adjustment. I just love that. Just got to make an adjustment to that formula for success, make an adjustment in your thoughts. It's like Tony Robbins says, the best way to change your emotional state is to change your physiology.
Yeah.
Just, what do they have? Like women and men that go into the bathroom before a job interview and do the power pose
Yeah.
with your hands on your hips for 3 minutes and, think really great thoughts, and all of a sudden your physiology is different and you're acting differently, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or look up. I mean, you never see like an inspirational picture with a person looking down at their feet.
Yeah.
They're always like this.
Absolutely.
People say even blind people do the victory pose. They've never seen the victory pose, but when they feel victorious, they put their hands up.
They do, yes. Isn't it fascinating? And I guess this is where, for me, like, I guess understanding this human self that we have incarnated into, to recognize that, our mind is one part of it, but our body and our physiology is such a massive contributor. And as you say, if you can get into your body, then it changes the thoughts that become available to you.
Right. Well, they're saying too, like with heart math, we're perceiving from our heart first.
Yeah.
And then now all of a sudden they're talking about our gut. That's our second brain.
Yeah.
So the information going to our heart, to our gut, then to our brain, or to our heart, to our brain, to our gut, we don't know.
Yeah.
But what we do know, our body's involved.
Yes.
It's involved. It's not just up here.
Yes, that's right. And Indigenous wisdom systems would say this is our first heart, first brain. Sorry, this is well, you might even say it's the third brain if we think of the gut. But
that's what I think.
Yeah, third.
I don't have the scientific proof yet. But
no,
I think that's why a lot of times people who are sensitive to energy, their heart, they're really connected to their heart, and so they're picking up on this information. Well, if someone would have said to me, well, that's pretty normal because your heart is perceiving first.
Yeah.
If I would have known that when I was like 5 years old, then I've demystified a whole bunch of stuff. Like, when I went back on my heels with somebody, I didn't want to go by them. That was because my heart was reading the energy, and it was intuition saying, go back.
Yes.
But we weren't taught to honor that.
No, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, so I'd love to hear you speak to the creating wealth side of things, because, again, a big part of this event is really giving permission for women to really step into their sacred gifts and to actually receive money in exchange, so that then their life's work and their soul work, their vocation, as it were, is fully aligned with what they're here to do. So, and that means receiving money in exchange for those gifts. And I wonder what you might say to that. So for women who are struggling to either value their gifts or charge money in exchange for their services, what would you say? How can we sort of upgrade this programming?
Well, I think you have to have a belief structure that supports that receiving is good, or it's okay to receive. I had an interesting session with a man, actually, that was a minister, and he couldn't charge for his services. And he was a practitioner of NLP and hypnosis. He just couldn't charge. I'm like, well, really? So we started talking about it. And so we started unearthing that he didn't think if you were doing spiritual work, it was appropriate to receive money. And I go, gosh, do you tithe at church? And he goes, well, yes, of course I tithe at church. And I said, well, apparently God doesn't have a problem receiving money. And he's like, oh my God, changed it on a dime.
Yeah.
Literally.
On a dime, exactly. Yes.
So he went from $0 to $1,500 a session. So I think it's interesting because I'm in a place right now, we had talked before, I lost my partner that I did this business with for years. And I've always been in the support role of my partners, and to be the one that center stage was a little daunting. And I realized I had to look at my beliefs. Is it okay for me to step into my spirit, my true gifts? And do I have to hide behind a man? Is it just the man that can shine? And I don't believe women have to be angry with men about that. But I think a lot of us women have had my program or have my program where it's only okay if we're in a support role.
Yeah. But
to really step into our gifts and really just let us be like independently owning them. That's a belief system that I had to go unearth to make sure that I'm aligned, because if I'm doubting that, then I'll never be able to step into this gift of mine to, help or guide people to demystify failure and step into their greatness. Yeah. So I have to, receiving is a huge thing. And it's not just with money. I see many women that struggle financially. If you look at receiving in general, they just don't. So it's not just the money thing. Yeah. It's like, or taking money. Well, instead of thinking it as taking money, receiving money. So, and then think of what we can do with that money that we receive. Because the more we receive, the more we can give. Yeah. So I think the number one key for a person, if they're not experiencing financial success or any success that they want to, take a step back and say, what beliefs must I have about myself and the world to perpetuate this pattern? Am I not worthy to receive the money? Is it not right? This is the most common one. Rich people are not very nice. Yeah. So your unconscious mind goes, well, I'm not going to let you do that because I want you to be a nice person, right? So you can't make money. And is that true? Really, are rich people not nice? I think there are some rich people that aren't, but I think probably most of them are nice. That's those are generational beliefs. Yes. That get passed down. And oftentimes we have no experience of the belief personally, but it was passed down to us, and so another way would be too, is to look at the beliefs that your mother and father had about money and how have you taken those in. Your beliefs, I always say, beliefs are the rules we have for our life. And it's the reticular activating system in our brain to search for all the evidence to prove that belief right. So it's just a repetitive thought. It's not even true. It's only true because we believe it to be. Yeah. So, if you're always getting the evidence that you can't have enough, well, you got to be running some beliefs that's supporting that.
Yes. And I love what you say, because to me, there's a number of facets, one of which is the familial programming around money. But then there's also the programming around what it is to be a woman and the role that we play as women, being either second tier or secondary or support roles, as opposed to playing the lead role in our own life.
Right. And how can we do the lead role and support? That's the masculine, feminine, right? Yeah. So when we can balance that, we can go in and out of it. Just because maybe you're the powerhouse at work and you're the leader at work, when you come home, and if you're in a traditional relationship and you want your man to kind of just take care of you, you can slip into your feminine. But we don't. I think what's happened is what we've got locked into. If we're going to be successful, we have to be, the bitch, the ball buster, whatever. And that's not true. That's not true. It's only true because we perceive it to be true. Yeah. And that we can be these divine, lovely women and have that. And our divine masculine can show up in a beautiful way, just like our feminine.
Yes. I love that. And going back to something that we talked about before we jumped on here, was around creating from what I'm going to call grace. We're talking about not, or sort of maybe dissolving that pattern of creating through push and hustle and force. And I think I hear you speaking to that now, which is about being able to have this beautiful harmony between this creative, feminine, fluid, ephemeral nearly aspect, and then going into the masculine and having this beautiful dance between the two, which allows us to be in a doing mode and a being mode as beautiful balance. And I'd love to hear you speak to that.
Receiving and giving, right? It's all about, I think it's really interesting. I've kind of tied this a little bit to Dr. Stephen Porges. He does the polyvagal theory. And I think what's happening in our world is that our sympathetic nervous system is really jacked up. Everybody, we're getting beeped, we're getting, text messages, phone calls, when do we ever settle down? Yes. And so our nervous system is really on alert. People are jumpy. They're looking to fight. Yes. They're looking to fight. True. And doing like binaural beats, isochronic beats, doing breath work. It's huge in getting that sympathetic and parasympathetic to do the dance.
Yeah.
So left and the right brain to do the dance, because, we need both sides, right? We can't have one without the other. And, playing tag when we were little was awfully fun because that was the perfect balance of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And so knowing what, when we're on alert and we're looking for problems, we're getting picky, whatever, it's just, what would happen if we just calmed ourselves down? And like we were talking, having press the reset button in yourself to say, okay, it's like rebooting a computer. Too much, we got to reboot. Too many files are open. You come back in, you reboot it, and then you get to choose, okay, now how do I want to proceed now? Do I want to be, just being reactive to life, or do I want to be responsive to life? And I think it's really important that we learn that skill. And it can take 5 or 10 minutes, maybe not even that. I mean, think of how many people don't even breathe. And one of the best ways to calm our nervous system down is to breathe.
Yes.
We have to do it. We might as well do a really good job of it.
We forget sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, we get all tight and, all of us do it. But I think the thing is, when we talk about responsibility, like being responsible, we're, teaching people how to be responsible communicators with themselves and others, but also learning to calibrate themselves, like really start to wonder, like I do an exercise in class, fear versus love. And we think of all these fearful things. And then I have them go and I have them check in with their body. What does their body feel like? And they're like, oh my God. And you can just see the whole class, everybody kind of turns in. And then we shake that up, and then we talk about all sorts of loving things, right? And all of a sudden they get expansive, they get taller, everything, their chest opens up. Now I want you to feel what that feels like. So now they have like, oh, this is what love feels like. This is what fear feels like. So when you're driving in the car and your jaw's clenched and you're hanging onto the steering wheel and your mind's racing, check out your body. What's it doing? Oh, I'm in fear. Is that where you want to be? And then you can make a choice. Coming from a place of choice is really important.
Yes, absolutely. And as you say, that response ability really that's what we get to appreciate, that in the moments where we're feeling out of sorts or whatever, that we can actually respond with consciousness, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I wonder, just to finish up, to kind of look at, I guess, what I hear about your evolution, your personal story, and now having created, Thrive Learning Collective and working with women in spirit and really doing your passion work in the world, to really be living your life on soul purpose. Can you tell our audience what that feels like for you, your own evolution, and now stepping into your own personal power and having created and continue to create this beautiful platform in service of your mission?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it and I think I see this transition for a lot of women once they turn 50. It's like they give themselves permission to, and I dream of a world that we don't have to wait till we're 50 or 40. I mean, I dream of a world that a little girl grows up just really believing that she can do what makes her heart sing.
Yeah.
And I always love this quote from Michelle Obama when Oprah asked her, do you think you can really have everything you want, Michelle? And she said, I think you can, but sometimes it's not all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so for me, through all of these experiences that I've had in life, I believe that I have been able to experience life fully since I got that anxiety off the plate, and that I could actually connect with people heart to heart, and that I could actually love more deeply. I could actually accept myself more deeply, and all sorts of beautiful feelings, have joy more deeply, and the deeper I increase that capacity within myself, because I wasn't running the anxiety, the more I could give it out. And so I sometimes will say to people, it's not that I have a perfect life. I don't have a perfect life. But in the morning, and in the morning, sometimes I want to just pinch myself to say, I get to do this.
Yeah.
I get to do this today. I get to be the person that gets to guide someone to be their best. I get to be a guide today of greatness. And so for me, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yes. Yes, I love it. And it's such a beautiful, inspiring story, you know, in terms of what you've been through, what's possible when you start to make conscious decisions in alignment with your soul mission, your soul purpose, what's coming up from inside of you when you start to say yes to that and just watch that evolve. Yeah.
And you know, the other thing is, the more us women allow ourselves to shine, the more supportive we are to other women.
Mm.
And I think that's one of my main missions, is to teach women to be kind to one another. You know, this whole triad, triangular communication stuff, that's old. old. To really hold each other in high regard, hold each other and support each other is, I think, crucial. Crucial.
Absolutely.
And it's so enriching. It feels so good.
Doesn't it just? Yes, I agree. And so you have a beautiful gift for our audience, which we've sort of touched on a little bit as we've spoken, which is around pressing the reset button. So meditation called, I believe, the reset. So can you tell us a little bit about this meditation?
Well, so when I first learned NLP, I was at the effect side of the equation. I was always at the mercy of life, you know, and because that's what anxiety does. It's really self-focused. Everybody's doing something to you and whatever. And when I got that I could do a pattern interrupt, which is the reset, and say, stop. If I was feeling something that I didn't want to feel, or it just wasn't even useful, it was not getting me where I want to go, I would go inside. I'd say, stop. And I'd shake off that feeling, because it's just a feeling, right? They're not bad, good, right, wrong. They're just feelings. Are they useful or not is the more important question. And then I'd say, well, what would I rather feel right now? What would be more aligned to where I want to go? And I would get that, like, well, maybe I need to feel more joy and love. Okay, so let's think of a time that you felt joy and love. And I would think of a time, and all of a sudden joy and love would be running through my body. And then, oh my goodness, I'm seeing the world in a whole different way through the lens of joy and love versus that old anxiety. Yeah. So I call it the reset. And when we get that, it's just a little simple technique. That's all it is. And it starts with being able to calibrate your body. What is it that you're feeling? See what that, feel into it. And then looking on the outer world, we've all had those days where we're driving down the street and every red light we hit. Yeah. And then you go, oh God. Now, a responsible person about energy was going to say, okay, what's going on here? I gotta align myself to the green lights, and so I don't know. I think that being able to do that small little technique can give you so much empowerment. It can give you so much confidence, because now you are stepping into the co-creator. And the more experiences you have that are positive in that, the more confident you become and the more competent you become in the world.
Yeah. Yes. Such a powerful process to learn, really. And once again, if we're actually able to step into our power by having these strategies, then it really does create a far more efficient movement forward, doesn't it? To go, we don't have to spend days or hours or weeks, even once something's, triggered, to go, no, as soon as you notice you're activated or triggered, to be able to do that reset, to, again, move more efficiently through your day, your weeks, your life.
I'll never forget the day that all of a sudden I realized, I can't remember the last bad day I had. When was the last bad day? That was my life for so many years.
Yeah.
I was searching for the good day. And now I look at it and, I've had challenges, but I will say that there are very rare moments where are days that I have that are bad days.
Yeah.
Bad moments.
Yes.
Not bad.
Yes, exactly. This is right, isn't it? That comes to us all, in terms of life and challenge and all the rest of it. But the choice is whether you stay there.
Right. Yeah. And apparently we don't like to be there, so we don't have to stay there.
We don't have to stay there. That's right. Yes,
No.
absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. It's been such a
Oh,
delight to connect with you. And I know that there's going to be so much goodness coming out of that for our audience. Thank you.
thank you so much. And it's just great spending the hour with you.
Yes,
Great
wonderful.
time. Thank you.
And so we'll be back with more Spiritual Success Revolution very soon. So please stay tuned.